In Bismarck and Mandan, we have an overcast sky, southwest wind of 10 miles per hour, relative humidity 58%. The barometer is on the rise at 30.01. And currently here at K-Fire, it is 37 degrees.
And we continue with the Legislature Today show, brought to you in part by the Northwest Landowners Association, by Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, including the North Dakota Rural Electric Cooperative, and their members Minn Kota Power and Great River Energy, and the North Dakota chapter of Concerned Women for America. We're live at the Peacock Alley, the Beef Innovator of the Year from the National Cattlemen's Association, every Monday through Thursday night on the Legislature Today show. Here again, your host, the managing editor of Great Plains News and the Great Plains Examiner, Dale Wetzel.
This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota, where it is 2-for-1 martinis night, which is always a popular special. And if you are out driving about and want to have a quick one, the Peacock Alley American Grill and Bar is an excellent place to stop in. We have on the telephone with us Mr. Paul Gentile. He's the Executive Vice President for Strategic Communications and Engagement for the Credit Union National Association in Washington, D.C. I should point out that this hour of the Legislature Today is sponsored by the Credit Union Association of the Dakotas. We also have with us Mr. Robbie Thompson, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Credit Union Association of the Dakotas, and also Mr. Jeff Olson, a Vice President for Advocacy and Awareness for that association. And we also have Mr. Representative Paul Owens, who is
Mark
Owens. Excuse me, I said Paul Owens. Paul Owens was a delegate to the Republican convention from North Dakota.
Yeah, Republican District Chairman Fargo.
Yes, and I looked at Mark Owens and I said, Paul Owens, my goodness. Well, it's one of those things, it's probably leftover, brain abuse or something. We have Mark Owens, Representative Mark Owens, who is a Republican from Grand Forks. And Mr. Gentile, I understand that there is a website put up by the Credit Union National Association called smarterchoice.org, and I would like you to tell me what the purpose of that is.
Yeah, actually it's called asmarterchoice.org, and it's a website we created a few years ago, CUNA and all the state leagues, like Robbie's organization. One of the powers of the credit union system is we work together cooperatively, and we all joined forces and created this site, asmarterchoice.org, to tell the good story of credit unions to consumers, to the media, to anybody who wants to learn about what a credit union is. Unfortunately, when you say credit union to many people, they get confused. They think it might be a place they can have a direct deposit. They think it might be a labor union. They're not sure exactly what it is. So if you go to A Smarter Choice, you can learn about credit unions, and most importantly, you can answer a few simple questions about where you live, work, and worship, and you can find a credit union that you can belong to. There's a credit union locator built into the site.
So you can find a credit union that you'd be eligible to join based upon your community of membership?
Sure. You put in your address where you live, put in the company you work for, your place of worship, what have you, and some options will pop up for the credit unions that you can belong to. You can't belong to every credit union. We have fields of membership, but there is a credit union for everybody. So we're confident anybody who goes on will certainly find a credit union they can join.
Mr. Thompson, I understand that there is a similar website in North Dakota that promulgates this message.
Well, we've built a site that actually serves a different purpose than Smarter Choice, and we link to each other. But CU Social Good, which is a site that we've built that tells the stories. In just 8 months, we've been able to accumulate over 800 stories of credit unions doing charitable giving, community service projects, financial literacy efforts. I think you'd be just amazed. Every time I walk into a credit union, they're selling raffle tickets for some charity. They're doing a bake sale. And that's just built into our people helping people philosophy, and part of the DNA of credit unions is to give back to their communities, to give back to the people that are members, to help with financial literacy, to provide college and high school kids with scholarship opportunities. It's just amazing the things that we do. So not only do we help on an individual level, person by person, by being great for our individual members, but we also help our broader community. And this site is a way that we're able to tell about all of those things that are happening out in the communities.
And this CU Social Good, how long has it been up?
It's been up for about 8 months. And like I said, we're accumulating all the stories. We're starting to get more and more credit unions that are sending us their stories. One of the things that credit unions, they're not really good about bragging about some of the things we do. We do a lot of it, and that's just who we are, and that's part of our nature, and it's been that way for many years. But I think we need to let people know how good we are, and that's what CU Social Good does. And on a much broader level, that's what a Smarter Choice does, and allows you to have an opportunity to go somewhere we can find out more about many of the great things that credit unions do.
Representative Mark Owens, a Republican from Grand Forks, is with us, but one of the reasons being is, well, for one thing, he's good company. Another thing is that he is a credit union member. Can you tell us, Representative Owens, about the credit union of which you are a member?
Well, I've been a credit union member for 40 plus years, I imagine.
Did you start when you were 5?
Thank you, but no, unfortunately, that's not true. I was thinking more along the lines of 16.
Okay.
But the amazing thing about the credit unions is it's neighbor helping neighbor. That's the way it was set up. You've already heard a little bit about the social focus of the credit union. But that's not – it's about financial education, and it's about financial literacy. Let me give you an example. Let's say that it's time that you want to take an active role and you want your son or daughter to be on that first car loan and to learn how to manage their money. Okay, you can come into the credit union. They not only will help you set up the accounts, explaining the accounts, but over a course of a period of time, they will talk to your son or daughter and help them understand the rules and the way it works in everyday life of financial literacy and how that works. Here in North Dakota, we tried to add that to the curriculum with a bill I'm sure you heard about, and the bill died. It was voted down, unfortunately. We wanted to make sure that our young people had financial literacy at an early enough age to where they could start building that. The world runs on credit.
What did that bill do? Just tell us about it a little bit.
All it really did was require a half a unit of financial education to teach consumer financial education, to teach our children the basics. It always surprised me.
At the middle school level.
At the middle school level, yes. But it always surprised me when I went to college how many of those kids I was with didn't even know how to balance a checkbook. They'd never seen a checkbook. They'd never had a checkbook. They'd always just been handed money. They didn't have any concept of it. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids in college, even today, with all the advance warning we've been saying this for years, they still get in trouble. And that credit follows them for a number of years afterwards into their first jobs, trying to get settled in, buying a home, buying a car. And you can come to the credit union. You can bring your son or daughter there. You can get that first car, help them buy it. I mean, come on, we know the parents are helping them pay for it, don't get me wrong. But you can help them to start building that credit and that relationship that they're going to need down the road.
And the way that reason we're able to do that is that although we have to make a profit to survive, we don't have to make a really large profit to be able to send it back to our shareholders. So we're not worried about just trying to get them into a loan and get them into another loan and get them into another loan. We're trying to find a member that we're going to have for life. We're supposed to be there to help them. And that's what the credit union does. So they'll look through the credit report, and they'll sit there and have a conversation with the person. They'll talk to them about things they could do on their credit in addition to getting the loan, whether it's better or not for them to get into certain products or certain services, and really try to help each person one-on-one.
Representative Owens, what credit union are you a member of, and how did you become a member of it?
Well, I'm a member of First Liberty, and I walked in. It was what we called a SEG, a Select Employer Group in that case. I happened to work for an organization then called, you may have heard of it, it's called the United States Air Force.
I have heard of it,
back
yes.
then, yeah. And what happened was they were the field of membership for First Liberty Federal Credit Union. So by virtue of my employer, I was able to join that credit union. Now, since then, I've volunteered because I'm a volunteer member of their board of directors. I'm actually the vice chairman. and I have been for 11 years now. But in the beginning, I was just a member. I was actually on the supervisory committee, which is a volunteer group of people. Again, this is about neighbor helping neighbor. These are volunteers who volunteer their time to help ensure the accuracy and financial security of the credit union, while the board of directors, again, volunteers, help set the vision and then ensure that the profits, although I don't even call them profits, to be honest with you, but the profits, the capital reserves of the credit union are both used to secure the credit union and returned to those members. Every one of those members being an owner of that credit union.
What's it like to be on the board?
Well, the pay's not great since you're a volunteer. But we do, since we are the board of directors, we triple our salary every year, 3 times 0, every year. We vote to triple our salary.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us what a board meeting is like. What sorts of things do you discuss?
All right. In the board meeting, and this is through financial regulation, because just like banks, credit unions are heavily regulated to protect consumer credit. So what we do is, as a board member, we have fiduciary responsibility to review the operation of the credit union for the past 30 days. And we routinely go through everything in a board meeting, anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours, to make sure that the financial stability is there, that the processes and procedures that have been set in place, in some cases what we would call two-man responsibility. In other words, no one person can control this. You have to have 2 sets of eyes and whatnot to ensure that there's no potential of fraud, there's no invitation of fraud, that everything is protected. Do you know, because of the way this is set up, since 1980s, back when the savings and loans crashed, we've got the 90s with the tech boom and bust, we've got the recent bank bailouts. Ever since then, you know how many federal dollars have gone in to bail out a credit union? Not one. Not one federal tax dollar. Not one taxpayer's ever bailed out a credit union. Because, again, neighbor helping neighbor, we get in a fix, one credit union will be called upon to help bail out a credit union if it were to get in trouble, and it does happen.
Didn't it happen at the Grand Forks Air Force Base?
Actually, it did, a long time ago. I believe it was before I got there. I believe it was in the 70s. And that's why we're First Liberty, and we're headquartered in Montana, but we actually have branches in Montana and Grand Forks, because Montana Federal Credit Union over there at Malmstrom Air Force Base was asked by NCUA to come take over. So they absorbed the bad debt. They absorbed the problems. It hurt their bottom line for a couple of years till they grew out of it. But their management, their capital reserve was so strong, they were able to grow out of it. And now they have 10 branches in 2 states. It's about a $157 million credit union. That's really not huge by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a comfortable size to offer any number of services and meet the needs of our growing population.
How popular is the credit union amongst the folks at Grand Forks Air Force Base? How many people join?
Not like Navy.
Not like Navy. No, Navy's huge. No, it's pretty much everybody at Grand Forks Air Force Base, and fingers crossed with the new tanker wing, hopefully, it'll grow quite a bit more. I mean, it has shrunk with the base. As the base has shrunk, it has met the needs, and it will grow again as the need develops there.
What sort of loans does it typically make? I mean, what's the loan demand at the credit union?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, because this is a very good point. If you need, and this is where it really comes into like asking your neighbor and your neighbor helping you out, it's those microloans that banks don't want to do the paperwork on. They don't want to fool with. They really want a healthy loan where they can amortize over a time, and they get a good return, and they can be assured of that monthly income coming in with that little piece they take off the top, that interest. But it's those short microloans, maybe a 90-day note or a 6-month or 1 year. It's those quick loans to get you over the hump or something. That's where the credit union really shines. Now, you can still get your 5-year car loan, 6-year car loan. Hey, you want a new RV? Dale?
I don't.
You
no.
don't? Are you sure?
I do not want a new RV.
We
no.
can fix you up.
I don't want a used RV either.
We can fix you up with either, all right, and get you that 7 or 10-year loan to pay it off. So you call me, let me know when you want that.
I tell you what, the idea of financing any vehicle over 7 to 10 years is not something that I would do.
Keep in mind, if you get it from Mark, you got to have the Crimson Tide logo on the side of it as
true.
well. So,
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Representative Owens? Obviously, from your accent, you ain't from around here.
You think? Well, actually, I could change my accent for you if you like.
No, I don't. I like your accent.
Anyway, so what it amounts to, and usually when I get this question, I just say I'm from L.A. and everybody looks at me. Really? Yeah, Lower Alabama. Mm-hmm. I'm a retired Air Force. I volunteered to come to Grand Forks back in 1991. I arrived in January of 92 because I think if you're going to move to North Dakota, you should do it in the dead of winter. So I moved up here in January, and I retired from the Air Force and stayed there and have been here now longer than I've lived anywhere else. But no, that doesn't mean I'll get rid of my accent.
I don't mean this to be ironic or sarcastic, but why did you volunteer to come to Grand Forks Air Force Base?
Well, it's an interesting story. I was way down south in South Dakota at Rapid City, and I'd been there 5.5 years, and I was looking for my next assignment, and Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines blew up, covered the largest overseas military installation in about 3 feet of ash, volcanic ash, called Clark Air Force Base. Well, all of those people got first choice at any base they wanted to go to right then. And believe it or not, I knew somebody up here that was that needed a new operations officer to handle the codes and the enable and the launch codes for the missiles. And I also knew there wouldn't be a mad rush to volunteer for Grand Forks. And I had a deputy commander that worked for me once who grew up when his father was in the military, was stationed at Grand Forks, so he grew up in Grand Forks as a little kid, and he always spoke very highly of it. Telling me what it was like when he. I don't think there was the mall. I don't think it was south of 17th Avenue back when he was living there. But nevertheless, he spoke very highly of it. So sure, why not? I went up there just to go house hunting and just meeting the people and seeing the area. But it was meeting the people, and it was just wonderful.
You were a missile officer?
I was.
What was that like?
Well, it was kind of boring. You sat 60 to 90 feet underground, watched TV, ate, and waited for somebody to tell you to launch nuclear missiles.
And we're all grateful that was a very boring job, aren't we?
Yeah, actually, it had its 5 minutes of terror, in 23 hours and 55 minutes of boredom.
And you mentioned, why did you want to be on the board of the credit union?
Well, it was a volunteer position, and I've always volunteered. I've always liked donating my time for something. And actually I was on the board of directors. I started for the purpose of actually just learning more about financial institutions down in South Dakota at what was then called, what was the name of that credit union? Was it Ellsworth Federal Credit Union?
Yeah, it's Sentinel now.
It's Sentinel now. And they were just a little $12 million credit union back then. And I started on their board because they had an opening. They couldn't find anybody that would even volunteer to fill the role, that would take the time off to do it. So I took the time off to do that back then. And I enjoyed it so much just from the aspect of the people I dealt with, the people you meet, more importantly, the people you get to help.
What did you learn about the financial industry as a board member? Was that useful to you?
Oh, well, I think so. I mean, just from the standpoint of understanding our economy and our economic system across the U.S. as well. The difference between the credit unions and the banks, the tax structure, the nonprofit organization, the ownership models. Obviously, at a bank, the shareholders get the money, get any of the profits and whatnot, and they are profit-driven. Quarterly reports, what have you done for me lately type thing. And then you have the credit unions that are focused strictly on the owners, which happen to be the members. See, that way you get to focus on your customer and your owner at the same time. Now, you can't beat that with a stick.
No, that's one of the great things about credit unions is that the owners sit on the board of directors. So of course you're an owner, you're going to make decisions that are good for your other owners. Plus, your neighbors are on the credit union as well, and their neighbors, and you're going to make good decisions as a board member that put their interest in mind. And that's really one of the big things that differentiates credit unions from other types of financial institutions.
I'm trying to figure out how to put this. Do you think that there should be regulatory differences between banks and credit unions based upon their ownership structure? I mean, if you're a member member-owned organization, do you really need to have the same type of regulation as a stockholder-owned organization?
There already are several regulatory differences between the two. Very, very many regulatory. Now, when it comes to handling the money, there are a lot of them are similar. Okay, but when it comes to your structure and what you're allowed to do, credit unions are actually restricted in a number of areas that banks are not restricted. Let's take member business lending, for example. There was a bill in front of Congress. At one point, I think it had 256 co-sponsors called Curia, and that was right before the crash of, what was that, 07, 08, 09, whatever.
October 08.
Okay, October 08, thank you. So right before that, and it had been going through the House and Senate, and it was designed to increase member business lending. And this is where it becomes really handy for the credit. Remember those microloans I told you about? Well,
yes.
What if somebody has a snow removal company, and they just need, $25,000 to expand? Well, what we were witnessing was some of those were having trouble getting $25,000, $35,000, or just little $50,000 loans to expand their small business, but it was what was making their money. It was making their living, and they were having troubles getting that from the bank, and that's where the credit unions were coming in as best they could, but they are limited on how much business lending they can do, for example, whereas banks are not.
We were talking about that earlier. Why is it that they're limited on the business lending that they can do?
It's called Congress.
And why did Congress limit the amount of business lending a credit union can do? What incentive did they have to do that?
I call it contributions.
I was going to say, are they called campaign contributions?
That's what I call it.
All right.
Well, because credit unions don't contribute. They don't have the money. Well, I take that back. As an organization, as an association, the association, like NCUA, will have a PAC. A political action committee. But credit unions, each individual credit union doesn't have a line item for donating to political campaigns, much to my dismay. But, they don't have that, and they don't have that ability.
And the amazing thing about our PAC, we do have a PAC nationally. And, Paul, you may know what the giving is, but, we get really small contributions from lots of people rather than a lot of PACs, which is lots of dollars from a few people. And that's what we do in the PAC.
Yeah,
so maybe,
Jeff,
Paul.
Go ahead, Paul.
The average donation for our PAC is about $26. Yet it's a very large PAC, raises millions of dollars. But, just like credit membership, we have 6% of the market, yet we represent 40% of the country in terms of membership. It tells you what kind of people we're serving, middle income, modest means, et cetera. Same philosophy in the PAC. We have a number of people giving a little amount to get to that big sum, and that's really the cooperative nature of credit unions. You talk about business loans and why we're limited. I think we covered that earlier, but just to stress again, there really is no financial or regulatory reason to limit credit unions on business loans. We're a great business lenders. Our delinquency ratio is lower than banks. We make those small loans that people don't want to make. It was a great example with a truck for a landscaping business, things like that. So if you try to find a reason that's logical, you really won't. It was really political swapping with the bankers that got us this unfortunate cap that we have today.
Well, Representative Owens, as a board member, I imagine you had a front row seat at dealing with the financial regulations that came out of the crash of 2008, and how has your institution managed to manage those?
Well, no, that's a great question, and the biggest. Well, we've sat here and obviously we've hired more people. We've increased the monitoring of regulatory in order to do it. In other words, it's cutting into the profit of the owners, which are the members. But we haven't seen it all yet. Frank Dodd did a sweeping. It was a big, bold brush across the entire industry aimed at the big banks, and it's not hurting just credit unions, but community banks as well. It's crushing them under the weight of regulation, and here's the sad part, we've only seen 25% of it. We've still got 75% of that bill to come to fruition, and when that hits, that's going to be a lot of fun for somebody, but nobody that I know of in the credit union or community bank arena.
We've been listening to Representative Mark Owens, a Republican from Grand Forks, who is a member of the First Liberty Federal Credit Union, which serves the Grand Forks Air Force Base, where Representative Owens used to be stationed. We're also This has been the Credit Union Association of North Dakota Hour at the Legislature Today. This is Dale Wetzel. Good evening.
Tonight at 10 on KFYR TV.
I'm Jessica Roos. A bill to address the child care crisis